All the or bad ideas.
Listening to the Brees Creator Podcast. I'm Lee Brees. Oh, say, can you see? My photography gig last weekend went well. This past week was really just a threshold week for me personally. A lot of stuff I just needed to get through. This coming week, I look forward to getting back to my to-do list, and I also have yet another trip to Washington, D.C. coming up. In this project, we're going to talk a little bit about goals and motivation over time. I know that achieving a long-term goal and having the motivation to do so can get hard, and I have some anecdotes from this past week that I'd like to talk about that or illustrate that a little bit. Anyway, great stories to share and ideas to talk about in this project as always. Whether you're really rich and money doesn't motivate you as much, or you celebrate your 2-week paycheck like the 4th of July, amateur or expert, there's something in this project just for you. If you do like this podcast, make sure you give us some feedback. Subscribe, message us, just some feedback. Now, for another project. So, first of all, in this podcast, I'm at Purdue now. I'm at school, and it's been really interesting trying to find places to record this. I've only done probably 4 or 5 episodes while I've actually been at Purdue. And I've recorded them in a lot of different places. I've recorded one at the Wilmuth Active Learning Center, which is just $1 million study hall. I've done some back in my dorm, back in honors, and some study rooms when they're rarely empty and I can go in there and do that. I'm always doing this stuff at night or on weekends, but actually the room that I've consistently found to be the best room for recording this podcast actually is the first room that I went to. And really, because I spend so much time when I want to do this podcast, searching campus for an open room to record this. It's actually always, a pretty good time of day where I can find open spaces. It's always really early or mid-afternoon, because the campus is really only packed evening and middle of the night. Those are it's college. College campuses are alive at night. People stay up during the night. That's it. But anyway, so consistently I keep going back to the same room. It's in Memorial Gymnasium here at Purdue. Obviously, it's been renovated. It's not a gym anymore. It's some office building with some classrooms. I'm in the basement, and they have this huge, it's a huge classroom. You gotta be able to fit 50 or 60 people in here. But this place seems to always have the best acoustics. There's never anyone in this building with the exception of an office room full of cubicles and stuff. It's a great room. I've got a table I can set up at the front. I can plug in. I can just sit down and go and just literally stare at the open classroom as I record this podcast. But that's where I am today, recording yet another episode in this room. It's just really interesting, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about how I keep trying to find places to record the podcast. So the thing is if you're interested at all in sound technology and audio engineering, it's just you talk about all the expensive things you can do to make it, to make a room really great for recording. And one of the issues I thought about being at Purdue is that I wasn't going to be able to find a place that was really a decent place to record. And it's similar to just the technology revolution. It's become easier and easier and more simple for the common man to get into stuff like this, and it really doesn't matter how great the recording studio is. The mic has such great quality. I don't have to worry about the echo in this room. I don't have to worry about some of the other background noise. The other really great thing about this room is that there's no filtration. I'm sure there's a circulation system. There's a AC in here, but when I'm in here, I can never hear it. And looking at the ceiling, there's really no vents or anything, which I guess from a suffocation standpoint is kind of disturbing. But I don't have that air noise. All the classrooms and honors, if I were to go to record in there, there's all this, the air circulation system is constantly on, and it's just so loud and annoying. And even when you're trying to do homework in there, it's annoying. So this is just a really quiet room where I can sit and record my podcast. Occasionally, I'll get somebody, because there's the door to get out of here is literally right next to this room. So occasionally, I'll get someone really slam the door when they leave. But otherwise, this is a great venue for recording the podcast. Also, if you've been religiously following this podcast, then you know that I use a free SoundCloud account. And with that being said, I can only post up to 3 hours of content. I actually learned that last week after posting almost 20 episodes. I learned finally last week that I can only post 3 hours of content. I knew it was a limited amount. I just didn't know how much it was. And so I calculated it and it's like, well, I can post 4 episodes at a time. That's just SoundCloud. But then again, everything is tied up to SoundCloud. So like if you listen to this podcast on iTunes or if you listen to it on Google Play, those are all tied to the SoundCloud account. So however many episodes I have on SoundCloud are how many episodes are up on iTunes or Google Play. Now, with that being said, if you really love this podcast and want to go back to the beginning, listen to all of our episodes, you can go to the website, which is breecewoodworking.wixsite.com/creatorpodcast. And all of the episodes are there in a player. You just click each episode as you'd like. It really does. I mean, I know it's not an app, like it's not a listening app like you would have on your phone. I know there's all these other podcast apps too that use like, the iTunes directory if you're on Android and stuff like that. Those are also connected to the SoundCloud account. But even like if you just to load the website on your phone through your browser and listen, like you can still like put your phone to sleep or whatever, and you can still listen to the episode. So I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but that's something you can do. Also, for you people that use YouTube out there, all the episodes are on YouTube. And I just want to take a second to talk about this because I know I haven't talked about it in a while, but we're gonna have the 4 most recent episodes or 4 episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. All the episodes are on the website. That is breecewoodworking.wixsite.com/creatorpodcast. And all of our episodes are on YouTube, which is actually my Breece Woodworking YouTube. I do not have a YouTube for the podcast, so you can check those things out there. Anyway, I am so happy to be sitting here now. I've actually really looked forward to getting this podcast done. I've really actually seriously wanted to sit down and record. It's something that I usually don't get to during the week, and as you can relate, sometimes it's been like up to months between episodes, and I really wish I could do this more consistently. I feel like that would be a really great way to generate a base, but just like I talked about in the last episode, building a following and building an audience is not really the goal of this podcast. Honestly, if you ever go into something with your goal of becoming rich and famous, then you're not going to succeed. So to me, like looking at the view counts on these episodes, it really doesn't matter to me, or how many people view the website or whatever. It doesn't matter to me because the goal of this podcast for me is to record my life. It's to document whatever happens, my thoughts, my feelings about things, get some insider information about what happened in my life during a certain week or during certain events. Because a lot of times, I even talked about this last episode, is that I go back and listen to projects even from 6 months ago, and I talk about things that I don't remember happening. And it's really interesting to go back and hear how I analyzed it, what happened, thought processes. It's a really interesting experiment. And the fact that I get people who want to listen to this podcast is just a side effect of me making these episodes. It's a consequence. It's not something that I'm going out to prove. It's not something I'm going out to do. It's not a cause and effect relationship. It just happens because I record the podcast. People listen to it, great. People don't listen to it, great. People repost it, great. People like it, great. It's whatever to me. I just want to record this podcast, and honestly, for a very selfish reason, just to document my life. And if people find that interesting, then great. I'm not a celebrity or anything. I'm just an ordinary guy, just trying to find his way through life. And I've also, like, the original point of this podcast was to be about like me and making, and like I was going to feature people. I was going to do interviews and stuff like that. I was going to do like just talk about the projects I'm working on, what I'm doing out in the shop, things I'd like to get into, things I learned. But then the podcast evolved into this, whatever's going on in Lee's life, that's what I'm going to talk about, more or less. I really would like to get into making and talk more about making in this podcast, which I'm actually going to talk a little bit about some creative stuff today. As a fact, I'm going to talk about my photography gig I had last week. But the thing is, I just don't get in the shop. I don't make things. I really don't do those kind of artsy things that I really wanted to make this podcast about. This is supposed to be like an artisan podcast, but I do talk about that stuff when it happens. So for those of you who like making and like creating things, stuff like that, I do try to put elements of that in every episode, even though I may not necessarily like get to something that week that actually is making related. But I always have some story or some anecdote to share. But that was a good segue because I realized actually once I went back and listened to last week's podcast episode that I mentioned at the beginning I was going to talk about my photography gig I had coming up literally within days, or no, it was the following weekend. So yeah, last weekend, because the last episode was 2 weeks ago, talking about this photography gig, and I was going into big detail about everything. And the first thing I'll start by saying is that I was hired to be a photographer at an event, and B, I am not a photographer, not in the slightest. I don't even, like, you can go to my photography page on my website. It says, I'm not a professional photographer, let alone amateur or hobbyist. Literally quote what it says. I don't consider myself a photographer by any means. Actually, I have some experience now, but I have no experience. I don't like have a photographer. I mean, I do have a photographer Instagram, but I don't go out of my way to take pictures, or like, I don't call up my friend and say, hey, let's go shoot some photos. I do that occasionally, times when I'm feeling it or when the sun sets out or something like that, but most of the time, no. But I'll give you some context for this photography event I'm doing. So it was some sorority was having some social event. They really wanted a photographer there. I guess that's how these social events for Greek life work in college. Honestly, I learned more about Greek life through this experience than I did about photography. The way things work, what different people are called, how often there's parties, what parties are called. It was like, it wasn't mind blowing. It was just like it seemed like it was just something more complicated than what I would have ever thought. I'm not saying it's complicated, but it's like someone really thought deep about how to organize Greek life. And I guess I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, so what happened was, I'll start way back at the beginning. So I talked about in another episode that I make one big purchase a year, and right now a one big purchase is around $1,000, somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. That's my big purchase a year. And I say that I don't make it a goal to make one big purchase a year. That's me limiting myself to one big purchase a year. And right now, just given my financial standing, a big purchase is somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000. And I spend that kind of money on like computer. A couple years ago, I bought the camera last summer. Those are like examples of big purchases. So that way I'm not going out like buying a laptop like every 2 years. That way I'm not going out and buying expensive equipment that I don't need. That way, or like even if an emergency comes up, like say I have to spend like $1,000 or $2,000 on my car or something like that. It's just a way to limit myself from spending too much money in a year. Which I'm actually really proud of myself as being organized financially as I am. Excel spreadsheets, man. I learn so much every time I get on Excel. Anyway, so it was like last May. I was really thinking about getting back into YouTube again because I had a YouTube channel when I was younger. It was, for being like 12 years old, it was, in my opinion, widely successful. So it's something I love filmmaking, and Casey Neistat really got me back into it. Not that I was watching Casey Neistat at this point, but I just really wanted to get back into YouTube. I really thought that would be something I'd have a lot of fun with. And so I decided, well, I need to buy a camera. I don't really have a good camera. And I thought, well, if I'm going to buy a camera, I need to get a camera that I can build, my repertoire, my inventory around, and not just buy some pathetic $300 digital camera. Which, let me say this first. I've learned that a story will always be like quality. So yeah. So what I mean by that is like the content of your video will always be why your video or your whatever you're making, whether it's art, whether you're painting something, whether it's photography, whether it's a podcast, whatever it is, the content is the reason it will, why people will look at it, why people will watch it, why it'll get the views, why it'll get the likes or shares, whatever. It will never be because of the quality. Like, honestly, like you can make a really good YouTube video using just your phone and it will blow up. Like there's evidence of that everywhere on YouTube. Anything. So like people, like I thought about this analogy when I was thinking about this before. People watch videos because of what's in it. People watch videos for its content. People will not watch your video for its quality. No one goes out of their way to watch videos just because it's really good quality. And there's some YouTubers here I've actually met on campus who are great examples of that. Have drones, have really high quality cameras, good mic setups. Some of that, what is that thing called? It's the thing where you can you hold the camera, and like when you're on a skateboard or something, it's a stabilizer, just keeps the camera stable. It like rotates in like a million directions or whatever. But like he had that thing, and there's a couple other YouTubers I've encountered like that. But like I've watched the video, and it's boring. Like there's no story to it. There's no plot. There's no content. But like the quality is just outstanding. They just need someone like to help them come up with video ideas, like, and find out like what their channel is supposed to be. Now with this podcast, I really don't have a firm identity, but at the same point, so I am a hypocrite talking in that point. But at the same time, that's just my opinion on some of these YouTube channels. And there's another guy who's actually here at Purdue who's actually really, really popular. Not because he's a YouTuber. I mean, he is a YouTuber, but he's not famous because of YouTube. And he's into YouTube. But I watched some of his videos, and it's just, I mean, you have to have the right ego to be into YouTube. Like, you have to be very narcissistic to a point, to a degree. But this guy who I watch, I mean, he just thinks that, people will watch him just to watch him drink coffee, or people will watch him to watch him wake up and watch TV for an hour. Like, that's what his YouTube videos are. They're vlogs, but they're just not interesting, like, at all. Like, I mean, honestly, like I said, it's content. So I mean, if you have to make your life more interesting to get people to watch stuff, and people aren't just going to watch it because you post it and it's high quality. Like I said, even not even just like a high quality camera and mic. It's just like the high quality of the editing. Like, it's not even that. Like, it has to be a good plot. It has to be a good story. It has to be good content. I know I digressed a little bit, but yeah, no one watches that guy's YouTube channel, in my opinion. Compared to how famous he is otherwise, no one watches his YouTube channel. Anyway, so I wanted to get back into YouTube, so I wanted to buy this camera, and I wasn't going to buy it until I actually had saved up money for it, because I never take money out of savings. And so I say, well, once I save up enough money for this, I'll buy it. And what happened was that I was going to my uncle's cabin in the UP, and I wanted to have this camera for the trip, and so I actually had to give myself like a little loan of a couple $100 to go buy this camera, which is a Canon T6i. After doing a lot of research, I realized that was the camera to get, at least at the time. That's what I thought. I'm looking back now, like, there's the Canon T6S, and there's also the Canon 70 and 80D, and there's that series, which those cameras are well over $1,000. The Canon T6i was about, I think I paid $700 for it, which is not bad at all. I mean, to me, that was actually a little bit more money than I was originally going to spend, which I'm glad I did, because that is like, of the high-end cameras, or like maybe of the professional cameras, that is like the lowest of them. Like, even the T6S is better. Like, I would have extremely regretted it had I gotten the T6. So I'm glad I paid the extra $200, whatever it was, to get the T6i. But anyway, I bought it for this trip. I got a lot of video. I mean, I got like over 100 gigabytes of video, thinking I was going to make a YouTube video about it. Never did. I tried to, but once I got that footage, that's really when I realized that the laptop that I have, which I bought when I was a sophomore in high school, I bought this computer right after the Dell came out with the XPS series, and it was also right after Windows 10 came out. So this is like 2015. And it's just like, it doesn't have a good enough processor, doesn't have enough RAM, definitely does not have enough internal storage because I can hardly install any programs on this. It's got 128 solid state, and that's it. I have room for hardly any programs. I definitely don't store any data on this thing. But anyway, it just no graphics card. I just realized this computer was not optimal for editing video. And so that was a huge discouragement. And so I'd never really gotten to YouTube. But since I had this high quality camera and I had a generic lens, it wasn't a high quality lens. It was the $50 lens that the camera comes with. I started getting into photography a little bit. I was at somebody's graduation party, and I brought my camera just to take pictures, obviously, because I also wanted the camera to take pictures at family events and stuff like that. But anyway, I was not interested in photography. I was not interested in that point. But there's somebody at the party who was a photographer who saw I had this camera, and she spent about an hour with me at the party showing me stuff. And that was initially something that got me interested. And then I take nice photos every once in a while with the camera during the summer. Then I took more pictures of it, using it late summer. And then I really didn't do anything with it in the fall. And then I think there was literally one time I posted on my Instagram story. This is my personal page. I asked if anybody. I was just in the mood. I just I asked I put up on my story asking if anybody wanted to go shoot some photos with me. And actually, people, a lot of people replied. I was really surprised. Sorry. I mean, the other stupid thing was I put it at 10 o'clock at night. So it was why are you messaging messaging me back at midnight saying that you want to go shoot photos. Anyways, but there's one, maybe two people that like took that as I separate everything: woodworking, personal page, photography, everything. I never post anything on the same page. So like if you're looking at my personal Instagram page, there's no photography on there whatsoever. But anyway, this girl like seriously thought that I was a photographer. Like she thought that like I do it for a living and I know how to do it and everything. And so she keeps like, she asked if I could do headshots for her like at some point. Actually, very coincidentally, I did not have my camera that weekend, so I couldn't do that. But she was going to pay me to and everything. I was like, gosh dang it, missed the opportunity. But then also it was like 2 weeks ago, she messaged me asking if I would be their photographer at their event. And it was just like, I have no photography experience whatsoever. I have no idea what I'm getting into. I have no clue what to do at all. But if there's anything I've learned from doing work over the summer, is that you never say no. You never, even in business, even when I worked at the hardware store, you never tell the customer no. That's like the one rule in business. You never tell the customer no. So I didn't say no to her. I said I'd do it. And then I asked her if she sent me a folder of the with the photos that were taken at another event. So she sent me like photos from the barn dance in the fall, and it actually had the photographer's like contact information on it. So I was like, well, he's done their events before, so maybe I should just like talk to him. And I'm so glad I did that because I met with him and he taught me how to use the manual mode of my camera and everything, which I was shooting everything automatic before. I mean, I knew about aperture and like shutter speed and ISO and stuff like that, but I never ever actually had like applied it to photography. I never actually used it on my camera. And so I was now learning how to use it and everything. And on top of that, he let me borrow his external flash because I thought the flash on my camera was going to be okay. But he said that you have to have the external flash. And he was so right. Like 100%, you have to have the external flash for this event. And he was a really great friend. And we actually made a long distance connection. His brother is related to somebody who's semi-famous. Or not related. His brother is friends with somebody who's semi-famous. So that was an interesting connection that we had. But he also does videography, which is really more of what I want to get into. So hopefully we'll be in contact more often. He's a senior, so I'm not. We'll see. We'll just see how much more contact we make down the road. But he was a really cool guy to learn from. I was able to talk to him for about an hour. But needless to say, it was a really cool opportunity to be able to talk to him. The other thing I was worried about this event was that my lens wasn't going to be good enough. That's the other thing I learned right away about this camera, is that I needed to get a higher quality lens. And I had no idea what to get, like a 50 millimeter, or I didn't even know that. I had no idea what to get. So I just had my standard 35 millimeter lens on there, and he said that I don't want, like, for events like this, you don't want to use the 50 millimeter because like you're going to constantly be standing across the room to get photos. When instead of standing like 5 or 6 feet away, in an event venue, you're not going to have that kind of space for that. But needless to say, it'd be nice to have a higher quality lens. But then when I got to the event, I was really surprised just how great the photos came out. I was really surprised. The other thing talking to this guy is that like I was anticipating being there for like an hour and just like spending an hour uploading photos. And because I never done this before, this goes back to something I talked about in other episodes. Like I had no idea what to charge the guy, like charge the sorority. I had no idea what do you charge for a photography event? Like I had no clue. Like, I am just in this really awkward limbo between childhood and the work world, where it's like, how do I value my time? And I'm so used to valuing my time like somewhere between $10 and $15 dollars per hour. And so it's like when I do photography like this, I just had no idea. And I asked the guy, when I told the girl I'd do it, I said I'd do it for $50. And when I talked to the guy, he said, oh, I usually charge $300. And it was like, oh my gosh. Like I'm very self-conscious about cost too, especially because a lot of times when I tell people like a rate that'll do something, it's like I'm doing it for the first time. Like over the summer, I did some of that contract work. Like I was doing that, like I installed doors for the first time. I'd never installed a door before that time. Same thing with photography. I'd never been an event photographer, so I don't want to charge like an absurdly large amount of money or what a regular guy would charge because I can't promise results. So I feel very self-conscious about that kind of stuff. But anyway, after talking to him, it was like, and he told me what like what was going to be involved in doing this. And I was like, I had no idea I was going to have to sit down and edit photos. I had no idea that I was going to have to, how long it was going to take to upload. I had no idea how many photos I had to take, which when it was all said and done in an hour and a half, I took 700 photos, and I had to edit each one of those photos in Lightroom individually, which itself took like 2 to 3 hours. So I did get it done though. Like it took about a solid, total, like being at the event, not including learning, being at the event, editing the photos, uploading the photos took about 4 hours. So $100, $25 an hour. That's fine. And I sit here today. This was last weekend. I've yet to be paid, and what I've learned in the past, like if you're not going to be adamant about getting paid, then no one is. So you have to be adamant about getting paid. And her and I are supposed to meet up later today. We haven't scheduled a time, but it just works out for both of us that we can meet up today. So hopefully today I will finally get paid. But what I've learned from this event is that like photography is something that's really realistic. That's something that I could do, like seriously, like to make money. And also, it's a great way to make money. I mean, when you can charge like $50 or $60 an hour, or like even $100 an hour, like to me, like I'll make way more doing photography than I ever would hanging doors or digging ditches or, a lot of actually when I was in high school, like late middle school, early high school, a lot of what I did was like dig sump pits. So like you have a sump pump in your basement. Like I spent a lot of time digging pits for people like that, like going into crawl spaces and digging holes. Like it was just something that for some reason, I just found a lot of people that needed that job done. It was a very specific job, but I mean, it was just a way to get paid. I wanted work. I didn't want a real job. I just wanted, a way to make money. And to me, getting my hands dirty is not something I'm afraid to do. But photography would be a way better gig to make money, especially if I want to start like valuing my time a little bit more. Then photography would be a great way to do that. And it's also not dirty. I don't have to be out in the hot sun. I don't have to sweat. I don't have to get wet. I don't have to wear, uncomfortable clothes. I don't have to wear boots. I don't have to get muddy. I don't have to get all this crap on me. I don't have to, I don't have to be outside. It's all inside. At least what I've done so far. It would just be a really great thing to get into, and I really hope that more people ask me to do photography stuff in the future. Because the other thing is, in terms of like marketing, like I don't market myself. I do not like make ads about myself. I mean, I'll post saying that I did something. But I don't like to harass my people on social media, especially because like on my personal pages, I don't like to harass people, asking for work. If you do the work, or if you do the content, you do the stuff, the work will come to you. Like I think that's what Casey Neistat said. I know I bring him up a lot in this podcast, but I watch him now. He's also honestly, there's a lot of things that him and I mesh. Like I agree with him on a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff that I find is like a lot of stuff that he does, I find very interesting. So I mention him a lot. And I feel like one of the things that he talked about in one of his Q&A sessions was that the best way to get work is to do. Like once you do the work, like the work will come. Once you make videos or you do photography, whatever, the work will come. You just have to get the initial work. Like once people see that you do it and see you do it at a high level, like people don't know people who do this stuff. It's all what's the expression? Hand to mouth, foot to mouth, whatever. It's all mouth to mouth advertising. That's how these people find out who these people are. So like it's posting stuff on social media, it's getting shared, it's people and your followers knowing, stuff like that. I will never make ads or anything on social media for any of this stuff, whether it's photography, woodworking, or whatever it is. And the other thing is like, I noticed it this week specifically. This is digressing now into a new topic. I noticed that life, like, I know life speeds up as you go because as you get older and older, like a year becomes a lower and lower percentage of your life. Like when you're young, age 5 or age 10, your life just felt so long. And like 20 minutes just felt like forever. But then once I got to high school, it was like an hour went by faster, days went by faster, years went by faster. And now that I'm in college, like the same thing was happening. Last semester was like, I would say like the slow end of being fast. But like I realized like this semester, like it's already week 6. Like, oh my gosh, like literally week 6 after winter break. And I thought about it. I'm like, life is like really speeding up. And the reason this connects to the last topic is like, I don't have a lot of time to do stuff. Like, you have to use every single second of your day. You cannot waste a second. This is what I talked about in last episode. I hate wasting time. I hate putting stuff off because you don't have time for that. At least I don't. Like, you have to get your stuff done now. And connecting it back to the last topic, like, I don't have time to be begging people for work because a lot of times I have enough work on my own. I don't have time to do, to advertise and get more work. And I know, like I said, turning down work, like, I will never do that. I always do work for people. And I will never complain about being too busy with work. I never will. Ever. But anyway, something else that happened this week, and like I said in the intro, this was a really, just a threshold week. I have waited for this week for such a long time. Like, you have no idea how long I've been waiting for this week to come. And with that being said, it's really interesting that I phrase it that way because I really the audition I had this week was for drum major for the Purdue All-American Marching Band, which I have waited for forever. Like, goodness, since June or July. To me, that's a long time still. And it was the season just felt long. It's I just want to get to the drum major audition. And so, at the time, I would say I was motivated. I was motivated to achieve this goal. And, during the season, I was following, I would watch the drum majors and see what they're doing. I would follow some of the game management stuff. I was studying the history and all that good stuff. But then once the season dropped off, I was glad it was finally over, relief. And then, once school started, I was so busy with school, and stuff like that. I was looking forward to the drum major audition. I was preparing for it and everything. But the thing was, it was always the second or third thing on my to-do list. It's hard to make a long-term goal a priority. And that's something I really want to hit home in this episode. If you have something that's due tomorrow, for me, I had an essay to write last weekend, so I didn't study for drum major. But that essay was due, Monday. And it's well, I'm going to focus on the essay because it's due on Monday. And it was it would always be every weekend or every day, there'd be these, I'd have 3 or 4 things on my to-do list that needed to get done today. And I would just never get to the studying for drum major. And it the thing is for the audition, there was a history component, there was a marching component, there was a teaching component, there was a game management component, which I had no idea about. That really ticked me off. I knew that was part of the drum major audition. I just didn't realize that was there's multiple rounds. I didn't realize that was going to be in the first round of the audition. So needless to say, I failed that. Odds are I'm not going to be a finalist for this, which to me I'm okay with because honestly, I just feel really bad for the directors because I feel terrible that I wasted their time in the interview. I feel as at the time they committed to putting into this audition process, I feel like me participating in it and not knowing what to do was just a huge waste of their time. I mean, it's a waste of both of our time, but I just feel bad about wasting their time. I also feel bad because after being in the ensemble for only a year, I felt I also went into the interview and was talking I knew everything, which I also feel really bad about because these people have been here for years. So you're talking about 20-some years, and I'm going in there trying to talk about my definition of the program, which was it was so embarrassing. Then I also felt I came off as a resume builder, which is not me at all. I believe leadership is nothing else other than servitude. When you're a leader because you serve others. Servants are leaders. And I know that's if you go back to the Bible or biblical times, that's so ironic. But seriously, that's what leaders are. They're people that serve others. And that's what I am. I am a person that every leadership capacity I've had has been some form of service. I've never been a CEO. I've never been the president of something. I've never been the head of a friend group or something. It's always, I've always been in a group that does service. And my goal has always been to take the burden and responsibility off others. That's something that makes me feel good. When I can make someone else's life easier, that makes me feel good. And when I make someone else's life harder, I feel like crap. And that's what happened with this drum major interview. It was completely opposite of what I wanted to happen. It makes me so mad. Grr. like I said, totally okay with not getting drum major this year, and B, not being a finalist, which is really kind of disappointing in the sense that, it was really going to be like, I was either going to get drum major this year or I was going to get drum major when I was a senior. I don't feel like I'm going to be drum major when I'm a junior. So like the process next year will be like, it'll feel like I wouldn't get it, but you can always hope, right? And so like after the season was over, I never really got the chance to focus on this long-term goal. And yeah, like this is like kind of like goal setting inception, but like I was also thinking about one of the like I want to be drum major because I love band, I love the kids, I love the students, I love the directors, I love the history of the program, I love Purdue University. To me, like it'd be a huge honor to have that position, just because of the direct impact you can have on so many kids and so many people, on the lives. You have the ability to improve so many other people's days every day. It's just like it's a really good feeling inside to be drum major. Like honestly, that's why I never wanted to be like student body president. I never wanted to be like quarterback of the football team, because you didn't have that like direct impact like I do when like I did when I was drum major in high school anyway. I also want to be like a long-term goal. We're talking about like years long, like decades long. Like I really want to be a successful politician. I really want to redefine what like being a politician is. And I noticed that like all the people, they did other stuff first before they were a politician. And they also just had things that make them interesting. For instance, like Ronald Reagan was an actor before he became governor of California, before he became president. Dwight D. Eisenhower was in the military and he was a general before he became president. Mitch Daniels spent a lot of time in the private sector before he became president.
Indiana's popular governor, Mitch Daniels.
But even that, like, there's just things that make people interesting. And like, you have to be an interesting person for people like to want to like know who you are and follow you and stuff like that. And to me, it's like, also like, I want to apply it to be a Rhodes Scholar. And that would, most of the people, like, there's that like an athletic component, or at least there used to be for like athletes, but now it's for other stuff. But it doesn't have to be just athletes anymore. But like drum major was going to be like my supplemental thing for that, if that makes sense. Like, I know and I really wish I would have brought that up in the interview. I didn't, but it's whatever. But like, that's a long-term goal. And so in the grand scheme of things, drum major is a short-term goal. And I feel like, and this is what I wanted to talk about in this episode, is that like my motivation for that, for being drum major, was I treated it like it was a short-term goal. So in other words, my motivation was like, all of it was concentrated at the beginning, and it wasn't as much like the motivation that I have is not like I didn't wake up every day and say I want to be a drum major. Like it's not as much as like I wake up every day I want to be a successful politician. Like the amount of motivation in terms of like quantity, like for this drum major thing, was significantly less. And so over the 6 months that it's been, like it just got so the motivation I had just got so diluted that by the time I got to the end of the process, like it was practically all gone. And on top of the fact that my motivation for this decreased, on top of that, I was like, whenever free time I have, I want to focus on this. And the thing was, I really don't have a lot of free time, so I never really was able to focus on this. But because I said I want to put all my brain power into this whole drum major thing, I said that like all this other stuff I want to do, I need to postpone. So I started making a list of all these things, all the people I wanted to meet, all the things I wanted to investigate, like joining RTC or campaigning with someone, like all that stuff. I just put on a list of stuff I wanted to do after drum major was over. And eventually all the motivation I had to do all these little things just added up to the point where it was equal with, if not greater than, my drum major stuff. And it's not that I went and started doing this stuff. It's just like, well, if I'm not going to do this stuff, then I'm not going to do drum major. Like the motivation just died. And so motivating yourself to achieve a goal like that is it's just so difficult. It's hard. And I struggle with it. And it really came back to bite me in the butt. And there's some other circumstantial stuff about the audition that I feel like also caved me, but the motivation just died. Like that, bottom line. And I know like going into like the next 365 days that I'm really going to be hitting myself or really like, I'm just going to be in general really mad at myself for not taking this process as seriously as I should have. But at the end of the day, It's like, it is what it is. I mean, also really excited to be on BBD next year. That's something I really look forward to doing. I was not on BBD this past year, which BBD is the big bass drum. So if you know the tradition of the All-American Marching Band here at Purdue, you know the world's largest drum. There's a crew that, obviously takes runs with the drum, does tricks with the drum during the game, halftime show, whatnot. So I look forward to doing that next year. So that'll be really fun. It hasn't sunk in yet that really failed myself with this. But at the same time, like, I will never lose sleep if the person who gets selected, and this is anything, job, drum major, whatever. If the person who gets selected over me is better than me, fine. I believe the better person should be selected for anything. That is, if the person is better. I will get mad if the person is not better. Now, what I will not personally settle for, and what I will lose sleep over, is that if somebody works harder than me, then when I say that, like, I will get really, really, really mad at myself and not sleep at all and just think about it all the time if I work really hard, but someone worked harder than me and that's why they got it. Like, does that make sense? Like, the reason I don't feel drastically upset about this, I mean, obviously I will at some point in the next week or so. But I don't feel mad at myself. I mean, I don't feel as mad at myself because I know I just put no effort into it. And I don't feel like I gave myself a realistic shot at it because I didn't put in the effort. I wasn't motivated. I didn't work hard for this position. And if I was a finalist, which they announced them like next Friday, I guess, even if I was a finalist, like, I would really be honest with the directors and say, hey, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really don't feel like I earned it. And if you really think that I could be drum major, I really want to work that much harder. Like, I want to I feel like I have to make up for this last part of the audition because I feel like I didn't work hard for it. And we would be really blunt with them in the fact that I feel like there had to be like 5 other people that worked harder than me who are more deserving to be in my shoes right now. But at the same rate, that's hypothetical. I really don't think I am going to be a finalist. So needless to say, that was just that process. And I'm sure once I try for drum major again, I'll go back and listen to this episode and just listen through my thought process and stuff like that. And, like I said, that is the mission of this podcast. Able to go back and listen to what my thought process was at a certain time in my life. So it'll be really interesting to go back and listen to it later. So the last thing I want to touch up on, something I alluded to in the intro and also my DC trip. So first off, at least really quick, I've never sung before a day in my life. I think I'm okay at singing. I've always, one of my all-time dreams is to sing Back Home Again in Indiana at the Indy 500. That is like you talk about dreaming of being a successful politician, this is above that. I would go to heaven after, I would be okay with dying after I sung Back Home Again in Indiana at the Indy 500 and then going to heaven. I would be okay with that. That would be fulfilling, my all-time want. So anyway, but you got to start somewhere. I've never been in choir. I've never done singing of any kind. So I tried out to sing the national anthem at baseball games this spring for athletics. They have open auditions today, and I went there, and there was a lot of little kids, a lot of old people, but I really looked, it was a really good, even if I did it just for the audition process, it was a really good experience. And then even if I do get it, that'll actually be really exciting, which, I think I can sing. Having no experience was a huge problem. But I think I did well enough that we'll just see. That's why I said, "Oh, say, can you see my photography gig?" Yeah, did you hear that in the intro? Go back and listen to it now. You'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, last thing I want to do before I end the episode: DC trip coming up. Flying out Friday morning at 6 a.m. That's trash. Going to DC with the Pi Sigma Alpha group, which is the Political Science Honorary Society. To present research. I'm not presenting research, but the other groups are, and I'm just going along as an observer, obviously just taking advantage. It's a fully funded trip by the Political Science Department, so I really do look forward to cashing in on this trip. With that being said, there's also really cool opportunities. We get to go to the Black History Museum, the new Smithsonian Museum. We're going to go actually visit with Georgetown Law School, which to me is huge because I didn't realize that was part of the trip when I applied for it. But Georgetown is mine. If I were to go to law school, which I'm not 100% that's what I want to do, Georgetown Law School would be my number one choice. So like this is like dream come true. Well, I would say dream come true, but this is like really exciting that happened. On top of that, there's a lot of like other touristy things that we might do. And also we're staying in Roslyn, Virginia, which is like less than 2 miles from the National Mall. So I'm really hoping, like, unlike I did in San Francisco, I'm really hoping that I choose to go for a run on the National Mall, like in that, I can't remember what Marvel movie it was, but there's like that sequence, and maybe it was Captain America, maybe it was like Avengers, I can't remember which one, but it was when Captain America just does laps around the National Mall, and I think it's Hawkeye that he was with, like he just kept lapping or whatever. But I just think of that sequence and that, like, I just really want to go for a run on the National Mall. Like, I've not done that before. I think that would be super cool. I've been to DC multiple times, so like I really want to do that now. So anyway, that'll be coming up. That's next weekend. It's a 3-day trip. I got a lot of homework I got to do ahead of time. That's Friday, Saturday. We fly back in Sunday night. So really look forward to that trip. Hopefully I'll have a podcast episode after that, talk a little bit more about it, talk about what happened. Anyway, I'm running out of time. I've decided that I got to keep this episode around 45 minutes if I want to be able to post 4 episodes on SoundCloud. So anyway, I got to end it. Thank you so much for listening. Art is a shared craft. So I like to feature artists in this podcast and diffuse art everywhere. In the outro of project number 19 of the podcast, I'd like to feature my man from Buenos Aires with his hit, More Than Just a Feeling by Julian Biagio. Check the show notes on the website to learn more about the song and the content in this episode at breezewoodworking.wixsite.com/creatorpodcast. You can tweet at us on Twitter or follow us on Instagram. I'm Lee Brees. I'll see you next time on the Breeze Creator Podcast.